Well, today is Senior Sunday, and our theme is a journey of faith, blessings of wisdom. And with that in mind, I'll take us to the scripture that will dominate our preaching today, and it's in the book of James, chapter 1. I'm going to read two sections of James. One will be James 1, verses 5 through 8, and then we can forward up to chapter 3, and I'll read verses 13 through 18. Those of you watching by way of the stream, if you are in a position, a place where you can stand, we ask that you would stand with us. For those of you that are in the building, if you are able, we ask that you would stand with us as a physical showing of reverence to God's word. James 1, starting at verse 5, and it reads, "If you need wisdom, ask our generous God, and he will give it to you. He will not rebuke you for asking. But when you ask, be sure that your faith is in God alone. Do not waver, for a person with divided loyalty is unsettled as a wave of the sea that is blown and tossed by the wind. Such people should not expect to receive anything from the Lord. Their loyalty is divided between God and the world, and they are unstable in everything they do." If you will, forward now to chapter 3, starting at verse 13, and it reads, "If you are wise and understand God's ways, prove it by living an honorable life, doing good works with the humility that comes from wisdom. But if you are bitterly jealous and there is selfish ambition in your heart, don't cover up the truth with boasting and lying. For jealousy and selfishness are not God's kind of wisdom. Such things are earthly, unspiritual, and demonic. For wherever there is jealousy and selfish ambition, there you will find disorder and evil of every kind. But the wisdom from above is first of all pure. It is also peace-loving, gentle at all times, and willing to yield to others. It is full of the mercy and the fruit of good deeds. It shows no favoritism and is always sincere. And those who are peacemakers will plant seeds of peace and reap a harvest of righteousness." If you will, as you're taking your seats, help me introduce the title for today's message, Passing the Baton. Amen. You may take your seats. Let me check media. Do we have the video? Thumbs up. Yes. All right. We're going to start with a video. Turn it up just a little bit for me, Mike.
Putting her tape down. She'll be running the second leg for the U.S.
So in the 4x1 in the heats, typically uneventful, just want to get the baton around, without any incident. And that was far from what happened.
As they're set on their way, and Barnoletta running the first leg for the U.S. She'll hand off to Allison Felix.
And she's already making up the stagger to her outside. The pass successful to Allison Felix, and down the back stretch they go.
So Felix now to English Gardner.
And they've dropped the stick.
They dropped it.
The United States is out.
I just remember, getting the baton and, running in and having a smooth leg.
All right. So we're going to pause it there for a moment if we can get the lights back up. This is a video from the 2016 Olympics. The women's 4x1 was slated and expected to win the gold. They had some of the fastest women that had ever ran. And they had a multi-gold Olympic runner in Allison Felix. This team, they had practiced, they had gone through everything that they needed. And now as they are going to qualify for the final round, to run to place for either bronze, silver, or gold, as you watched, coming from the second leg into the third, they drop the baton. In the race, when you drop the baton, you're automatically disqualified. There's no possibility to drop it and then pick it up and try to catch back up. That is an impossibility. It disqualifies you because part of the race is the exchange. In fact, when you see runners, especially those that do relay, one of the things that they do the most is practice the exchange. It is the exchange that is some of the most important things that they will do. Because no matter how fast you run individually, no matter how good your personal leg is, if that cannot transfer to the next leg of the race, everything that you have done up to that point is lost. And I lead in with this thought today on our Senior Sunday, a journey of faith, the blessings of wisdom, recognizing that we need to do better at passing the baton. And I'm not saying this with a finger pointing out. I'm not coming to talk about how the older generation has failed us. In fact, the truth of the matter is, I think there are moments where we have failed them. I think there are moments where we have all missed it. That we've gotten into such a space that we think that only our leg of the race is important. It is our own individual accolades, our own individual abilities. It is what we personally accomplish. And that's the only thing that we care about. And I believe this to be true even in the movement of faith. Many of you here, and this is tongue-in-cheek estimation, but I dare say I'm pretty good, came from a family of faith. By show of hands, how many of you had a mother or parent, grandparent, or at least close aunt or uncle that was a person of faith? Just by show of hands. You may put your hands down. That was close to 100%. Meaning that most of us did not just happen upon the faith, but the faith got to us, whether properly or poorly, because of an intentional transition from one generation to the next. And often in church circles, I've heard the conversation about how challenging it is to provide faith for generations that are my age or behind. And I guarantee, if this is a journey of faith, if we don't figure this out, we're going to miss some things. And we're going to be disqualified, not able to rightly finish our race. There's so many before us who ran strong legs, showed us what the faith looked like. Sometimes we understood it. We would see them humming hymns as they would clean the dishes. We would see them bite their tongue when people would say things in front of them. We would see them respond to community members and those that lived in our neighborhoods and treated them as family, even though we knew, ain't no way in the world this is my uncle. How's that my uncle and you ain't got no siblings? Yet, they figured something out and tried to carry it forward. And I believe we stand at an opportunity to continue that. To continue this faith that is so amazingly important that this journey does not just end with us. The scripture for today in James is one of those kind of epistles that goes back and forth. Some wonder if it is an epistle. Now, all epistle means is a letter. Is this epistle or this letter written to a very specific group of people? Or is this kind of something that comes a little later that's really meant for a larger group of people with no specific community in mind, but the holistic idea of challenges that are pervasive in a variety of communities that many people are dealing with? Thus, this can be scribed and communicated and shared to a variety of different locations and still have impact. And as the writer is writing, we pick up in verse 5 of chapter 1, that there's this notion that wisdom can be available. Everybody say wisdom. One of the things I love as an ethics professor is these deep conversations about life or virtue and what those things mean. I love how people try to make sense of it. I love how people naturally come up with ideas that they may not even know have a faith background as they try to polemically move away from the faith. It always gives me great joy when I sit in conversations like this. But this idea of wisdom often starts in the same space. Because the notion of wisdom is this idea of knowledge that can be applied. In fact, the word that is used here in the Greek is Sophia. Many of you know people named after Sophia, right? The word means wisdom. This idea of knowledge or understanding that allows one to know how to act or live. Wisdom is knowledge or understanding that allows one to know how to act or live. Therefore, knowledge alone is not wisdom, nor is action alone wisdom. If you do something right, but you don't know and understand why you did it, that ain't wisdom. That's happenstance. You got lucky. If you know what is right and you choose not to do it, that also is not wisdom. One might claim that to be stupidity. However, I won't go there yet. The idea is that if you have proper knowledge and understanding, and that understanding touches the application of your life, that now you know how to move forward. And I guarantee, I think all of us can look to God and say, I need some wisdom. I need wisdom to know how to deal with this particular situation. I need wisdom to know where to go and the direction that you want for me. I need wisdom to know how to deal with my siblings or my parents or my children or my grandchildren or my boss or my coworkers. God, I need your wisdom because I have some knowledge. I know what I want to do. I know how I feel. I know what I think might make me feel better if I was to do. But God, I need your wisdom because what I'm thinking may not be what you are thinking. James writes to this at-large community and he communicates to them that we have a God that is willing to give wisdom. And this wisdom pulls on a notion and an understanding that the Christian faith has taken and picked up from its predecessor, the Jewish faith. That Proverbs chapter 1, verse 2, in fact, let me read it for you, gives us an understanding of where we start with wisdom. As Solomon is writing, the wisest individual that ever was, and we can figure that out from 1 Kings chapter 3. He goes and he begins to write, and he says, this is the purpose of the writing. Listen to his purpose. He says that their purpose, these proverbs that he's writing, is to teach people wisdom and discipline, to help them understand the insights of the wise. Verse 7 says that fear of the Lord is the foundation of true knowledge, but fools despise wisdom and discipline. So then, if we're thinking about this journey of faith and we want to talk about the blessings that wisdom can provide for us, the very first thing maybe we should be asking is, what does wisdom teach us? Well, very first thing that wisdom teaches is wisdom has its genesis in God. Everyone say wisdom, has its genesis in God. Genesis just means beginning. Therefore, you cannot have wisdom that does not have a God center. If the foundation of all wisdom is fear, this is reverence, this is acknowledgement, and sometimes it's actual fear of God. If that is the foundation, absent that foundation, one cannot have wisdom. So, every academic or intellectual thought or premise that seeks to remove fear of God as central is not wisdom, but is the actual opposite thereof. When we try to determine which way we should go, what we should do, how we should act, we should not start with us at the center. Wisdom does not always mean that things will feel beneficial for you. Wisdom does not always mean that you will come out on the other side looking wonderful or feeling great or having attained everything that you want, because wisdom does not start its focus with you. It starts its focus with God. Therefore, if I start with a focus from God, then therefore this determines which direction I can go, because I know my beginning point. If I was, right, I enjoy math. And one of the things about math, there's a space in there where you're starting to learn both algebra and what they call line segments. They teach you about these different line segments. So a line is an infinite. It goes forever. It is infinite in the number of points that can be on there, right? That's a line. It goes in perpetuity. Then there is a line segment. This is a portion of a line. It has a beginning and it has an end. Then there is something in between called a ray. A ray to me is like direction. It moves one way, but it has a beginning point. I think too many of us want to be moving without understanding where our beginning is. And the problem with that is, if my beginning point is here and I'm there, it's only one direction I can move. But if I'm there and I don't know my beginning point, then I can assume my beginning point is over there. And I could be going the wrong direction. I can presume it's over here. I could be going another direction. In fact, I may even presume that it's on the other side of me, which would have me move exactly opposite of where I'm trying to go, because if I don't know where the beginning is, I could be rushing the wrong way. I've come to remind a group of folks as we talk about passing the baton that we also have to pass, that the foundation of our knowledge, our wisdom has to start with God. God is not a good addition to your life. God is not an accessory to your life. It is not a handbag. It is not a handkerchief. It is not a beautiful watch that you can show off to your friends. God is not any accessory to your life. Your life is not even the center place for God. God is the center. And if God is the center, this helps me to understand the challenges and the difficulties that I may go through, because if God is center, I know that God will never not do what God needs to do. I just need to align with what God is doing. But I can lose my faith if I make me center, because then I can implicate God for not doing the thing that I wanted God to do, because I've made me me at the center. God, you have failed me. God, you haven't blessed me. God, you didn't do this for me. Why? Because it's all about me. Can I tell you, as much as God loves you, as much as he's numbered the very hairs upon your head, as much as God has done all of these amazing things for you, you are not the center of God's universe. Wisdom teaches us that it has a genesis in God. But wisdom also teaches us that wisdom is generously given by God. Everyone say generously given. Not only does it have a genesis in God, but then James comes out and says it is generously given with plenty for anyone who asks. Now, this is going against the thought that you have to be somebody special to get God's wisdom, that you have to check off all of these boxes, that you have to be the perfect one. And in fact, people should come in obeisance or in obedience to you because you've ascended the wisdom ladder and now you sit as higher in wisdom as others because of some actions of your own. No, God's wisdom doesn't line up like that. This means that God could give more wisdom to anybody that God would so choose. You could be in the faith longer and somebody else can have more wisdom. You could be older, but somebody younger can have more wisdom. You could be on this walk for 50 years and somebody that just started 6 months ago could have access to more wisdom. Why? Because God generously gives wisdom to whoever asks. It is not up to you. We don't get a chance to determine how much of the wisdom we have. Only thing that we get to do is to ask our gracious God. God, give me the information that I might know what to do with my actions. Give it to me daily. Give it to me in this moment and give it to me in that moment, and expose when it is not your wisdom, but my own selfish desires. He says he graciously gives. And James continues, he says, not only does he graciously give this, not only does God hand this stuff out, but he hands it out in such a way that the only reason why you may be missing some of it is because you really haven't been faithful in how you asked. He says, don't be like the wind-blown seas tossing back and forth, waffling between if I trust God or if I don't trust God. If I trust God or do I trust this other information? I guarantee half of the enmities that we feel aren't enmities or fights or contradictions at all. You can have information and knowledge and still not have wisdom. You can understand the scientific components of the universe and still lack wisdom. He says God comes to give it, but you have to hold it in faith. You have to believe and not doubt. You have to not go back and forth with yourself. You have to not look at yourself and say all the reasons that you don't deserve it, and all the reasons that God couldn't give it, and all the reasons that somebody else has more, and all the reasons that, and all the reasons that, and all the reasons that God says, are you coming to me? He says, graciously given. And then wisdom greatly glorifies God. Everybody say greatly glorifies. James writes this in the first kind of section of his letter and then picks it up a little bit later. And he says, let me explicate. Let me make sure you understand what I'm talking about when I communicate wisdom. Let me show you what wisdom actually looks like, because there may be some of you that misconstrue wisdom. He says, if you are wise and understand God's ways, prove it by living an honorable life, doing good works with the humility that comes from wisdom. Do good works with humility. He says, but if you are jealous or there's selfish ambition, don't try to lie or cover that up, because jealousy and selfishness are not God's kind of wisdom. Wisdom then causes you to be great and not make people treat you like you are. No, I think you missed it. Wisdom means that you can be the most proficient person in the room, most knowledgeable, most able, in fact, have accomplished the most in the room. But you don't walk around looking for everybody to treat you like you are the most proficient and most capable in the room. In fact, wisdom would have you to treat them as if they are more capable than you are. Now, this is challenging because this is completely contrary to everything that we sense in our current life and expectation. Why? Because the first thing that rises up is the question of, well, what if they take credit for what I did? What if they don't treat me right? What if they use me for my good works? Wisdom says, we do our good works for God. Thus, if others benefit from those good works, it really wasn't for them anyway. So whether they thank me or they don't thank me, whether they lie or they tell the truth, it wasn't about them in the first place. And since it has been about God, I can still do what God has told me to do, even when others try to act like I'm the one that's crazy. But I can stand in the wisdom of God. I can stand under the power of God. I can stand under the unction of God and say, it does not matter what you think, say, or feel about me. My God has told me to do this. So, there will have to be times where you will have to look crazy to the society and culture because the culture is crazy to God. He says, but if you are bitter and jealous and there's selfish ambition in your heart, don't cover it up. Don't cover up the truth with boasting and lying. Like this, it can't get rooted out that way. For jealousy and selfishness are not God's kind of wisdom. Watch this. Such things are earthly, unspiritual, and demonic. There's a reason why we don't have to teach ourselves how to be selfish. We don't have to teach ourselves how to just think about me, how to manipulate others. But it takes a lifetime to learn how to be truly giving for others and truly follow God. Watch this. I know this because I've done things that looked like humility so that I could be praised for being humble. Come on. Don't worry. I'm going to talk about you. I'll just talk about me, right? It's like when people go around and say, I'm the most humble person in the room, right? And you're like, that statement is antithetical. Like, I don't think you can say that and be that, right? But some of us know we've done that. And you can tell. And let me help you understand. This is how you know when you've done it for the wrong reason. Because you're angry when other people don't acknowledge the fact that you did it. I showed up to church and nothing was ready and I helped out and the pastor didn't even say thank you. I opened the car door and helped them get their food in there and they didn't even say thank you. And the one that gets me all the time, and the Lord is still working on it, I've opened the door for a woman coming in the building. And not only does she not say thank you, but has the audacity to look at me like, why are you trying to open my door? Listen here, ma'am. I am trying my best to follow Jesus. I believe that there's still a little bit of this courtesy that's available, but you're about to pull something out of me that more than likely is demonic. Just say thank you and walk in the door. But I lift that up because that's not just a problem with her. That's a problem with me. I don't have to be offended by what you think about why I did or if you say thank you. In fact, you don't have to know everything I went through to make sure that this thing can happen. I did it because God told me to do it. I did it for the audience of one. I did it because this is who God has called me to be. And if I live into that, that is the wisdom that God is calling out of me. But that's not going to be the fast track to your professional and career ascent. You live that way, you might not get all the promotions. You live that way, people might always show up and just use you. You live that way, you might have to put up other protections to be around and be there. But can I tell you, if God is who we say that God is God not worthy of us living in such a way that he could get glory out of our lives even when we don't feel like it should be given glory? Humility is standing in a church in San Jose, California as a Bears fan. Knowing that they play the 49ers today and still praying for you. No. But wisdom says that these are the things that we need to be taking forward, that they should be modeled in our lives, because how can our children learn them if they don't see it? And how do we pass it forward knowing that sometimes they get frustrated at us? I never forget, I've been in counseling sessions where you can tell somebody's trauma has come from their families trying to live the faith life. My parents would give everything we had to everybody, and we would sit around poor. And I just never understood why she would do that to us. My mom would always let these people get over on her, and I vowed in myself I would never be like that. Not knowing she was modeling the behavior that is even greater. Because we're too busy trying to worry about, does the world recognize, and does the world see us, and does the world look up to us, does the world give us influence? We're all on the social media hoping that everybody else will give us what God is graciously trying to provide for us anyway. Because now, proper perspective will change the way that you live the rest of the story. Media team, do we have the second part of our video ready? I want to play part 2, and then I'll close the message.
We can still do this, things have been stacked against us throughout. Like, let's go in and let's finish this thing.
Set.
And there's the start. Baton running the first leg for the United States, Williams for Jamaica. Here's the first baton pass.
I think in the 4x1, I've typically been on the second leg. It's the longest leg that you can really stretch out, and I have really long legs. I have a long stride, and I think we try to use my strengths to kind of, take advantage of that, to have me run that really long leg.
And here is the U.S. with the lead.
We were able to go out there and have clean exchanges and get it done.
Tori Bowie has a big lead. Here they come for the finish. It's going to be the U.S. Jamaica second.
And with the second fastest time ever run, the United States from lane 1 get the job.
So 2016, what happens is, as they are running in their qualifying round, they drop the baton. However, they called for a review. The review found that a neighboring runner had crossed over the line and bumped into Allison Felix as she was preparing to deliver the baton. This is considered interference, which gives them another chance. What they had to do now was go out onto the track all by themselves to run again to see if their time could qualify. If their time qualified, they would now be able to go and run for gold. They go out, and the challenge with running by yourself is because typically the way that you feel a race is by those running around you. So now they have no one running around, no way to pace themselves. They just have to remember all the work that they have been doing all this time leading up to this moment. This now feels like practice. They're running a race like they run in practice. And so they go out and they have the fastest qualifying time that gets them into the run for the gold medal. As they get there, they're preparing to get ready to run, and one of the runners forgets her spikes, has no shoes to run in, and they're preparing to come out of the tunnel. They've already dealt with the adversity of dropping the baton. They've already wondered how they're going to make it by having to run by themselves. Now, one of their runners doesn't have shoes. Allison says, I typically carry multiple pairs of shoes. The challenge is my feet aren't the same size as her feet. And so not only were they not the same size, they were slightly bigger. For any runner, you know that shoes too big often create trip hazards for a runner trying to run their fastest. And so she says, well, I got nothing else. I'm going to tie your shoe up as tight as I can tie it up, and we're going to see if we can make this happen. They got bumped when they were running. They were made to run all by themselves. They now forgot a pair of shoes, but then they finally get onto the track, a chance to run for the gold. And instead of them being in the middle of the track, which is where you put the fastest runners, they put them in lane 1, which for many people they feel is a disadvantage. Why is it a disadvantage? Because I don't get a chance to feel the racers all around me. They're put in a bad position. They already had to run by themselves. They dropped the baton. They forgot their shoes. But let me tell you, there's something that happens when you get back up and you give yourself a chance. They run with everything that they have. They give it all they can give it. And we see what the end is going to be, because they win the goal despite all of the challenges. This is why James makes sense to us. Because James chapter 1 verse 2 starts off with some crazy words. Count it all joy. I wish I had a church that knew what that meant. It says, count it all joy. But not just all your good days. Not just all the great days. It says that when you run into troubles and trials, count it all joy. When you forget your shoes, count it joy. When they bump into you in a race, count it joy. When you're not positioned in a place to win, count it joy. Well, why, James, would I want to count that for joy? He says, because when you go through this, when the trial comes up, it is not meant to kill you. It's actually meant to strengthen you. It provides you a faith. And that faith gives you endurance. And that endurance allows you to turn into something that is now perfect and complete. Count it all joy. Because too many of us want to be strong and not battle tested. We want to be dependable without anybody ever having to depend on us. We want to think we can always win without going through all the circumstances that would allow us to know that we can always win when God is with us. What are you saying? The terminology often used is tempered. When I looked up like the metal kind of communication for tempered, there's steel and then there's tempered steel. The composition of the two are the same. The strength is different. Same composition, differing strength. You temper something by putting it into a fire. But watch this. Not just any fire. You put it just under melting point. You put it up to the point where it feels like it's going to deform, but it doesn't deform yet. You put it in right until you think it's going to start to bend, but it doesn't bend yet. Somebody has been asking, why am I going through what I'm going through? Why does it keep happening to me? How come it's not like this for anybody else? Might I suggest that your melting point might be a little bit higher than everybody else's melting point. And to get you to the tempered state, we got to raise the temperature. And then once it is brought to this almost melting point, you flash cool it. You cool it down real quick. And now what happens is that the reorganization of the composition says, we don't want to be melted like that anymore. Let's be stronger so that we can endure more than we could before. Not only do we not break at the same point, but we literally can endure longer because we went through what we went through. I've come to tell you that wisdom is now being able to change the perspective in your life. To be able to recognize that God is not doing this to spite you. God is not doing this to hurt you. God is not anti you, but God actually may really care about you. That God actually may really know something about you. That God actually may be strengthening you. That God actually may be providing faith for you. That God actually may be giving you endurance. Why? So that you can endure longer, so that you can take more, so that you can be stronger than you ever had been before. And this is the faith that we want to move forward. This is why we can hear our elders say, when peace like a river attendeth my way, when sorrows like sea billows roll, whatever my lot, thou hast taught me to say, it is well with my soul. This is why grandmama would say, my hope is built on nothing less than Jesus' blood and righteousness. I dare not trust the sweetest frame, but wholly lean on Jesus' name. On Christ, the solid rock, I stand. All other ground is sinking. Saying this is why we now say, great is thy faithfulness. Oh God, my Father, there is no shadow or turning with thee. Thou changest not. Thy compassions, they fail not. As thou hast been, thou always will be. Great is thy faithfulness. Great is thy faithfulness. Morning by morning, new mercies I see. All I have needed. All I have needed. You can't say that unless you done needed some things before. All I have needed. When tears filled my eyes, all I have needed. When the bank account didn't say it, all I have needed. When the doctor's report didn't say it, all I have needed, thou hast provided. Great is thy faithfulness, God. Great is thy faithfulness, God. Great is thy faithfulness, God. Lord, unto me. I pray we can pass that baton. That Jesus won't leave you. That Jesus is the very solid rock. And every single need He supplies. Because that is the journey of faith. And that's the blessing of wisdom. Pray with me.